That was a great visit. Actually, something like this is said by practically every business retention and expansion visitor after their first visit. The following guidelines will help you collect high-quality data on the opinions and perspectives of business owners. Without good data, you can't do an effective job at business retention and expansion, and unless the volunteers are enjoying the process, they won't complete all the visits. I'm Michael Darger, Community Economics Specialist at the University of Minnesota Extension. To begin, let's look at some guidelines to follow when doing the visits. Then we'll move on to do a role play that shows an example of a business visit. And finally, you'll evaluate what the interviewers did correctly and incorrectly in the role play. First, let's look at tips on scheduling the business visit. 1, you and your partner are usually responsible for scheduling the visits. Don't rely on the program coordinator to do this. Here's a short introduction you might use when making your call. You can adapt it to whatever works best for you. It might go as follows. Good morning, this is Michael Darger. Recently, you received a letter from the Minnesota Falls Economic Development Authority on a business retention and expansion program. The program involves volunteers like me visiting with business owners to get their opinions on local economic development issues and to review the survey that was mailed with the letter. My partner and I would like to schedule a visit with you next week. What would be a convenient time for you? 2, be sure to call within a week and do your visit within the assigned time period. 3, the owner or operator of the business should be interviewed. It is okay for a spouse or key people to participate, but it's not a good idea to have a lot of extra folks. 4, the visit should be done at the office or home of the person you're interviewing. Any quiet place is okay. Obviously, doing it at the local coffee shop is not a good idea. You get too many interruptions and won't have a confidential interview. 5, most visits take about an hour or so. 6, in past BRE programs, most of the local businesses have agreed to participate. However, if you get one of the businesses that refuses, you can stress the potential benefits of the program and that it only takes an hour of their time. If they still refuse, please notify somebody on the BRE leadership team as soon as possible. Now let's consider some tips on setting the tone at the visit. 1, naturally, first you break the ice. 2, express the community's appreciation for the business's economic contributions to the local community. 3, review the purpose of the project, covering the information on the inside cover of the survey on sponsorship and goals and rules. 4, before going through the questions, be sure that the person you're visiting has a copy of the survey. There are 2 very important survey ground rules. 1, the survey results are confidential, except as required by law. Only averages or percentages are provided in the written reports. You as a visitor must not share any of the information you learn on the visits with others. 2, the skip it rule allows the business owner to skip any question they want. They don't even have to give a reason why. Now let's look at some tips for the person asking the questions. 1, ask every question on the interview guide form. Don't even skip ones you think that everybody knows the answers to, assuming you can just fill it in later. Yes, it's a double standard. The owner can elect to skip a question, but you shouldn't. 2, ask the questions exactly as worded. All of you will be tempted to change the wording on at least one question, but no matter how bad it seems, don't change it. If 6 of you change the wording on one question, we'll have as many as 7 different questions, and the results won't be comparable. Stick with the wording. If you want to then ask another question with a slightly different wording, that is okay. Write down both the new question and the new answer. 3, listen carefully. As a visitor, your job is to listen. All of us have points of view and biases, but if the BRE project is to be really useful, the visitors have to be willing to seek the opinions of business persons they're visiting without in any way trying to influence the answer. After asking a question, practice waiting for an answer. It helps if you count to 10, silently of course. This is one of the hardest things to do when interviewing someone, but often they need a few seconds to think about the best way to answer the question. People respond very favorably if you really listen to them. 4, if the respondent doesn't seem to understand the questions or pauses for a very long time, simply repeat the question. 5, never suggest an answer, even if you're positive you know what the answer is. 6, on the questions without any response categories, you might need to probe to get a complete picture. However, you're not trying to qualify as an investigative journalist. Rather, You're simply showing the respondent that you're willing to listen to a more complete discussion of these ideas, if they want to give it. A common probing question is, could you tell us a little more about that? 7, if you're a public official and the respondent complains about taxes or road maintenance, don't get defensive. You're there to learn about their opinions. If you start debating their points, some will stop sharing them with you. There will be opportunities later on to correct the record if necessary. 8, don't promise any solutions to problems they mention. You as a BRE volunteer have no formal authority and budget with which to solve problems. Don't promise specific solutions to problems, but you can promise that the BRE task force will look into it. Now we'll switch gears and look at tips for note-taking. Always circle responses, never check them. For example, which response is correct here? We never have this problem when circling answers as seen here. The local task force and leadership team can't read the minds of the businesses if the notes are incomplete. The notes must tell the full story. In the first example, a response hopes to expand if conditions right does not begin to tell a full story. The second example does a much better job. By listing the visitors' names and phone numbers on the front cover, it makes it easier for the coordinator to call you if there are questions about your notes. This is extremely important, especially if your notes don't tell the full story. You would think we could skip the final tip for the note taker. That is to write clearly. What would you do if you had to summarize this response? Okay, now let's consider tips for immediately after the visit. 1, after leaving the business, the 2 visitors should talk about any urgent concerns and make notes on the back cover. These notes might include plans to move or close the business, information needed for an expansion, or any other urgent problem. 2, return the survey as soon as possible to the project's visitation coordinator. Now I want to introduce you to 3 people who will demonstrate how to use these tips for a business visit. Brigid Tuck is a visitor who will ask the questions. John Bennett is the other visitor and will take the notes. Craig Taylor will be the business owner and will respond to the questions. There are only 2 differences between the role-playing visit you're about to see and the real thing. First, our example will only take 10 minutes rather than an hour or more, as is typical in an actual visit. Second, the visitors will make a few mistakes. Your job will be to watch them and note when the visitors do things correctly and when they do them incorrectly. After they're done, we'll ask you to discuss the interview and evaluate the visitors. As a reminder, while watching the visitors interview the business owner, look for the following. 1, do they ask every question and ask them exactly as worded? 2, do they listen carefully and never suggest answers? 3, do they take offense to opinions? 4, do they promise solutions? When considering the note taker, look for the following. 1, does he always circle responses? 2, does he make the notes tell the full story? 3, does he list the visitor's name on the interview guide cover? And 4, does he write clearly and neatly? Now let's join the role play of a business visit.
Well, first, Craig, we really appreciate your willingness to speak with us here today. And the community really appreciates the contribution that your business is making to the local economy. Now, before we begin our questions here today, did you receive a copy of the interview guide before we got here?
You know, I did receive a copy of it, but it got shredded, so I don't have one.
Oh, you know, that happens all the time.
We have an extra.
Here you go.
Great, thank you.
Now, as we begin the interview, Brigid's going to ask you a few questions, and I'm going to take the notes, okay?
Sounds good.
All right, great. Before I get to asking the questions, though, I want to give you a little background on the project and explain a couple of rules we'll be using today. So first, the program is sponsored by the Minnesota Falls Chamber of Commerce, the Minnesota Falls Economic Development Authority, and North Star Community College. We are getting technical assistance from the University of Minnesota Extension and Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development. In addition, we have over 40 local leaders who are doing these business visits and other parts of the project. We have 3 major objectives for the program. The first one is to demonstrate the community's willingness to help existing businesses. like yours. The second is to identify needs and concerns of existing businesses so we can help retain them and even expand their employment. And third, the goal is to develop long-range economic development plans to help existing businesses. We have 2 rules we'll be using here today. The first is a confidentiality rule, and the second is the skip it rule, and I'll explain both of those. The confidentiality rule is that your individual answers to this survey are confidential and will not be shared unless we're required to by law. Your responses will be summarized with others and reported as percentages or averages only. And the skip it rule then, if there's a question that you do not want to answer and feel best that we should skip, we will do just that. You don't need to explain your reasoning to us. So with that, we can move on to the questions. Are you ready?
Yes.
All right, question number 1. Is all the information on the cover sheet accurate?
Well, actually, no. Our name has changed. It's Minnesota Energy Systems.
Okay, all right, thank you. Question number 2. When did your business begin its operation here?
Excuse me, Brigid. What was your new name again, and has your address remained the same?
Yes, our name is Minnesota Energy Systems. Our address is still the same, and we have not moved.
Thank you.
All right, great. So back to question number 2 then. When did your business begin its operation here?
We started in 1995.
All right, question number 3. What are your business's major products?
Well, we design and manufacture renewable energy systems for businesses, utility companies, as well as homeowners. Our number 1 seller right now is creating community solar gardens. We also have a significant amount of sales in rooftop solar panels and our solar applications for residential. And we're actually starting to generate a small amount of business in wind and geothermal.
Wow, that's really interesting. So our follow-up question, number 4, do you expect the demand for your products to increase, stay the same, or decrease over the next 3 years?
Absolutely increase.
Oh, increase. Can you explain to us why you expect that?
You know, I've been doing a lot of reading about wind energy lately, and I've noticed the growth that's happened in southern and western Minnesota. And if I was a betting man, I would bet that the largest increase is probably going to come from that sector of the market.
Well, that's not actually true, John. In fact, the demand for solar energy has quadrupled over the past several years. In fact, we expect to see a significant increase over the next 3 to 5 years. We used to do quite a bit of business in the wind sector. However, that's started to taper off quite a bit over the past several years for a variety of different reasons.
Thanks for that clarification, Craig. Moving on to question number 6. Does your company have problems retaining employees in the following categories?
Well, on the interview guide form, it says problems recruiting employees. So do you want to know about problems recruiting or retaining employees?
Oh, I apologize. You're right. It does say recruiting. So could you do that, answer the question, does your company have problems recruiting employees in the following categories?
Well, from looking at this list, I would have to say we have problems recruiting professional and managerial, as well as skilled and unskilled in the manufacturing area.
So question number 7. Based on the following factors, please rate your satisfaction with your current location as a place for your company to do business, where 1 is very dissatisfied and 4 is very satisfied.
Well, Brigid, I would have to say 4, very satisfied because of the K through 12 schools. But I would also have to say 1, very dissatisfied because of the reliability and the cost of broadband.
Oh, interesting. Would you mind explaining why you think that?
Sure. Well, the future of Minnesota energy systems is highly dependent upon software innovation and embedded sensors. And of course, great internet connectivity. Now, we design and develop our own sensors as well as our own software, but we're completely dependent upon local broadband providers for high-speed connectivity. And we've had a real challenge in that area. We've had numerous conversations with the broadband people at the city, but we have not had any successful outcomes.
Have you gotten that, John?
Yes, I have. Craig, you are very important to our account, and I think we can talk to the city's broadband office about this. We need to get this fixed.
Really, that would be great. Thank you.
All right, moving on to the other factors on this list.
Well, as I look at it, police protection would be a 4. Snow plowing and street maintenance are both a 1. We've been very dissatisfied with that.
Excuse me, my sister-in-law is the head of public works for Minnesota Falls, and I'm familiar with their track record, and it's excellent. Don't you think you should consider the facts before you're taking shots at this department?
Well, all I know, John, is that our employees have had a difficult time getting in and out of that lot during winter months. Not to mention our trucks have sustained serious damage due to the potholes.
John, please remember that we are here to solicit opinions, not share our own.
Okay, that's right, Craig. I'll make note of your comments here. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
All right, we'll go back to the interview guide. Question number 8. Are you currently considering A, downsizing, B, selling, C, merging or acquiring another business, D, moving, E, closing, F, expanding, or G, none of the above?
Well, I would have to say A, downsizing, or G, none of the above.
Well, that's interesting. Would you mind telling us more?
Well, sure. As I said before, broadband reliability and the cost issue, those 2 things can be a deal breaker for us. If we're not able to resolve these issues over time, we're going to have to downsize and perhaps even move part of our operation somewhere else.
Thank you for your insight on that, Craig. We really appreciate you being honest with us and sharing your feelings. So we'll be sure to pass that information along to our Business Retention and Expansion team that is helping to guide this program. All right, well, finally, our last question. Considering everything, how would you rate this community as a place to do business? A, excellent, B, good, C, fair, D, poor, or E, very poor?
Well, considering everything, and that is the pluses and the minuses, I would have to rate it a good place to do business.
All right. Excellent. Well, that's the end of our survey. We really do appreciate your time today and your honesty and your willingness to share.
Thanks, Craig. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you, John. Appreciate your time.
Our visitors did an excellent job on some of the guidelines and totally blew it on others. There's no question they have promising careers ahead as actors. Now it's your turn. Take a break from this video and work together in small groups. Try to identify the things that the 2 visitors did correctly and what they did incorrectly. After you've considered this for about 5 minutes, your meeting organizer will ask each group to report. If you follow these tips, you'll have a good BR&E program, get quality data, make a good impression, and have fun at the same time. Good luck.